Okay, class, I'm going to deploy an image with my WDS server. You don't need to do this. I'm just going to do this once because it took a lot of work to get this to work because of the ACE environment that we're in. Basically, our virtual machines are using this open source bootloader called iPixie, and I had to make some changes to the registry for the WDS server. Also, I had to change the size of some of the TFTP packets and undo the fix that we had to do normally to get it to work on Hyper-V machines. So basically, I had to change the registry according to this, and I also made some changes here. I put the maximum block size to here, and then I turned this back on to make it variable, so it would go up to 1500 block size, but it could be flexible. If I do this on Hyper-V, it didn't work in 2019. So I just did some things to get this to work in this environment. You can just watch. I want to show you how to deploy a machine at least once with the WDS. And also I want to show you the questions that it asked during the installation. So I'm going to go to my test machine and I'm going to reboot it. This machine, I'm going to power it off. This was one of my tests, guys. So I'm going to power it off, turn it back on. Right now the hard disk is completely blank. I'm going to press F12. You kind of missed that menu, but it says press F12 to boot to the network. That was one of the things we set up so someone doesn't automatically boot to the network card and accidentally install an operating system. I want to go show you something. I'm going to hit refresh. I already did this once. Basically, let me do it again. I'm going to delete this. So I'll show you what it looks like the first time I do it. I'm going to reboot this machine. I'm going to press F12. Now it's saying I need to approve it. There it said press F12 to boot to the network. Now it's asking me to approve that client to install an operating system. So I'm going to go back to my WDS server. Under pending devices, I'm going to hit refresh. That pending device ID 1, I need to approve it because right now it's pending. So I'm going to name and approve it. I'm going to call it test. That will be the computer name eventually. And I'm just going to walk through the wizard to approve it. So now if I go to pre-stage devices and hit refresh, I can see that I pre-staged this device, meaning I've created a computer account for this device before actually installing the operating system. It's called pre-staging a device. There's ways to do it manually. This is the easiest way to pre-stage a device. So I'm going to go back to test machine, and now it's going to automatically run. I'm going to move my mouse so this stops. There was a timer here. In 30 seconds, it would have automatically chose this option. I'm going to go back to my WDS. It's important to note that I'm signed in as joint domain, not the domain admin. These are my two boot options. I could boot to either Windows Setup or Windows Capture. So when I boot off the network, I kind of have a dual boot scenario. And it's asking, what do you want to boot to? So I'm going to boot to Windows Setup. Hit enter, give it a minute. This is where it was failing before in the past until I made those fixes. I just did a search on the internet, found the fixes, applied them. Now I'm able to boot these Linux virtual machines up to my Windows WDS server. This will take a few minutes, but basically it's going to load the boot WIM into a RAM disk, then boot to that RAM disk. So it's now, it booted the operating system, that Windows PE, and it is loading the installation program. This is on a virtual machine on ACE, so it's a little bit slow. I'm going to pause it while it's loading this up. Okay, the installation program is loaded into memory and running. Sorry, I'm trying to do something here. It's not working on my laptop. I'll try to do it in another screen. But I'm going to click. It's asking me to connect to a WDS. Even though I booted to a WDS, at this point, this program that loaded into memory doesn't know the WDS server exists. So it's asking for what language and keyboard do I want to use. Now I need to sign into my WDS to download an image. So I'm going to type join domain and our standard password. Now these are all things we want to automate. We don't want to have to come to each client. Okay, I'm going to try it again. Contoso / join domain and our standard password. It's forcing me to put the domain name in there. Now it's asking me, what operating system do I want to install? I'm going to install Windows Server 2019 Server Standard. If we go back to our WDS, under Install Images, in our image group, and that's the image that we loaded when we added the installation images from install.wim. I'm going to choose that image. Again, this is something we want to automate. Give me 1 second. Maybe I didn't put the hard disk in this virtual machine. I'll go back to lab. I'm going to turn this machine off. I forgot to put the hard disk in the machine. I created a blank hard disk right here. I'm going to put it in the test machine. When you're trying to install an operating system, it's very helpful to have a hard disk in the virtual machine to install to. So now I have a hard disk. It's a 50 gig hard disk. I'm going to try this again. I'm on the test machine. I'm going to power it up. Press F12 to boot to the network. Run the installation program. Now it's downloading the boot WIM from the WDS server. It's going to create a RAM disk, apply the boot WIM to the RAM disk, then boot to that RAM disk. It takes a little longer in this environment because I capped the block size at 1500. If I didn't cap that, it would be only a couple seconds to download that. It was a kind of a interesting little thing to get a Linux virtual machine to boot to a Windows WDS server. So that was kind of nice to go through that at least once. Now it's loading up the setup program. I'm going to pause the video while it's working. Okay, it's loaded. It's asking, what language do I want to use during the installation? English language, English keyboard. I'm going to sign in again. I want to use join domain. Choose my image that I want to install. Now I actually have a hard disk I can install to. I'm just going to click next and let it automatically partition the hard disk for me. Now it's getting ready and it's applying the image over to the hard disk. It looks like it's copying files, but it's really not. It's just applying an image. I'm going to pause it while it goes through this process. Okay, class, it's still copying over. I'm at 96% done. I'm pausing the video again. Everything's been applied. Now it's just installing features. As a fully formed hard disk. You know, with the system drive, with the Windows directories and everything like that. So now it's adding software for the default installation. Now it's going to restart. And this time it's going to boot to the hard disk. I want to check something on my domain controller. I'm going to sign in. I'm in Active Directory users and computers on the computer container. Look, now I have that test computer account. After I installed this operating system, it created this computer account for me automatically. I'm going to go to Properties. No, I'm not. I'm going to click on Advanced Features. Go to Properties. And under the Security tab, if I look at domain admins, it's not showing it now because I deployed it as join domain. But right now, join domain is the user account that created this computer object. Okay, so walking through that wizard and installing the operating system, created this account and was created by join domain. Sorry guys, I paused the video for a minute. I'm going to turn off advanced features now. Going back to the test machine. Now, guys, after it did the install, it rebooted the machine. Now here's an additional set of questions that I have to answer. I'm going to do this later for the product ID. I'm going to give them my firstborn. I'm going to set the password. I'm just using our standard password. Now, it's going to boot up. I'm going to press Control Delete. Now I can sign in as the domain admin because it joined it automatically to the domain. If I had to manually install the operating system on every machine in the network, it would be a lot of work. By setting up this WDS server, I can deploy Windows 10 boxes, Windows Server boxes, right from the network, and I never have to touch a DVD. Okay, I really don't need this machine for anything. I just have it here just to show you what an installation would look like from a WDS server. Now, our next task will be to automate this process. I don't want to have to sit down at any machine and answer all those questions and choose the WDS server and sign in and all that. That's what we're doing in our next lab, is creating answer files. Those answer files will answer all these questions for us. Okay, that's it for this video.